Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? Welcome to this week's 5x5, a podcast and YouTube weekly show that is dedicated to all things 5 yards. We're talking players, we're talking scouting, we're talking transfers, we're talking all things ultimately that pertain to the 5 yards game. We are Ali Maxwell and George Ellick, delighted to be with you with another themed episode. George, you've been enjoying this. It's giving our lives a bit of spice, isn't it? Coming up with a theme for these. We went continental a few weeks ago. We've done a goalkeepers episode last week, but now it's time to focus on the international week and specifically the Three Lions.
England. This is an England special. Obviously, we've got the World Cup qualifiers in the next couple of weeks. We've got England in the Under-21 European Championships too. So we are focusing on England players in this one. And we've had some pretty good guests on this show in the past. I'm not going to rattle through them all because I don't want to give preferential treatment. But I think we pulled a bit of a cat out of the bag here, a bit of a coup in terms of the 5x5 guest. Sky Sports presenter David Jones joined me earlier and we spoke about a couple or 3 England players that he's seen a lot of through his work and 3 players who he thinks are going to have big futures for England. So stay tuned for my chat with David.
After that, George is going to talk about another England star. Might be pushing it, but we'll call him a star. And then I'll be finishing us off. I'll be finishing us off with a young Northern Irish defender, and I'll be filling you in on those players going up on the 5 yards site by the end of the week. Here's Dave Jones, firstly.
So given that 5 yards is the transfer market for fans, it's only fair to describe getting Sky Sports' David Jones on 5x5 as an absolute coup. So David, thanks for joining us today. And for most people, this is we're doing an England special because it's the international break with both the senior team and of course the under-21s in their group stage as well for the European Championship starting this week. For most people, the international break, if it's not going to be a World Cup or a Euros, is a bit of a bore. But I'm guessing for you, given how busy this season's been, it's quite nice to have a break.
Well, first of all, hi, George. It actually comes as a huge relief, I have to say, this time round, because, we all love football. We all have a passion for football. We're very lucky to do what we do. And I would stress that first of all. But it's become quite the norm that we do 3 games every Sunday, and quite often we'll finish at sort of 10 o'clock at night after the late kickoff, and then we'll do 1 or 2 games on a Monday, and so you're prepping for 5 games every week generally. So you get to this point where after a few weeks on the bounce, you're looking sort of where's the break coming, just to clear the head, and we're very fortunate. This is not 9 to 5 stuff we're talking about, but it does become a point where it gets so saturated because it's not just the football that you're covering that you have to be across. It's all the other football as well, all the cups, the European stuff. So the international break has been the light at the end of a long tunnel, and I think we will return with renewed energy and vigour and vim for the long final straight, which will take us up until the end of May and the Euros. So yeah, it's been good. And in true footballer fashion, I took the opportunity to have some major surgery. So I had a double hernia operation last Friday, and so I've been convalescing quietly at home and wondering what to do on these nights without football on television, which has been quite a novelty.
We're getting back to full fitness, it should be said. And, Ali and I, doing Not the Top 20, because we endeavoured to do podcasts throughout the lockdown last year. And I must say, in the last few weeks, I am counting down the days till May, and we have a Monday morning where I don't have to. We are very lucky to do what we do, but I know where you're coming from. Really looking forward to speaking to you about 3 England players now, and especially, not only do you watch more Premier League football than most people because of your job, but also you get to watch a lot of Premier League football with some of the sharpest minds about in terms of the ex-players that you watch it with, which must be fascinating in terms of some of the talents you get to watch. We're going to be talking about Phil Foden, we're going to be talking about Declan Rice, and we're going to be talking about Dean Henderson as well. And we'll start with Foden, who is up on 5 yards at 90 million. 6 goals and 5 assists already this season from just 14 starts. He's 20 years old. And it strikes me that the days of the wonder kid, remember when Wayne Rooney burst onto the scene. Same with David Beckham. Those days are kind of gone because on social media and because of the depth of talent of young players coming through, having that one superstar who is just propelled to a different level to all others doesn't really happen as much anymore because all of the players are elevated to that level. But if there is one, Foden is it. And fair to say, I mean, are you as impressed with what you've seen in him as his reputation?
I would describe him, George, as the most gifted, complete footballer that England has produced for generations. And I think there are comparisons with those young, precocious talents that do burst through. And they've probably done it, and I'm talking about they, as in Wayne Rooney, I would say Michael Owen, I would even say Paul Gascoigne. They've done it because they've probably hit their physical peak very quickly, very early in their football development. So for Rooney at Euro 2004, he was 18, but he already had the body of a man, but he had the incredible speed and sharpness and pace that nobody could live with, combined with that incredible talent that he had. And unfortunately for him, the injuries and the knocks that he got thereafter probably meant that his career was never going to stay on an upward curve past, I don't know, the age of 25, 26. I'm just saying that off the top of my head. With Michael Owen, the probably decline came in even earlier because his game was built not on physicality, but on that incredible raw pace that he had, allied with his talent. So he was, again, 18, I think, at France 98. Paul Gascoigne was of a similar type to Rooney when he was coming through at Newcastle. He had that physicality, that incredible raw talent, and I think he would have been at the World Cup 1990, he would have been 23 years old. So if you're thinking about Phil Foden now, he's 20, as you say, he's going to turn 21 in May. Different to those guys, he hasn't probably had the run of games at club level at the same age, and we know why that is. He's playing for the best club in England over the last several seasons, and one of the best clubs in Europe. He has to compete with world-class players to earn a place in the starting lineup, but we're seeing that happen more and more with him. What I would say is that his maturity is just starting now, and his maturity, I don't think he's reached his physical, anywhere near his physical peak yet. He may still have some growing to do. If you look on Wikipedia, he's 5'7". If you look on Wisecout, he's 5'9". I'm not sure where this is going to end with Phil Foden. I think strength-wise, upper body-wise, he's got some developing to do as well. But I think this is a kid that's only going to get better, whereas the others had that drop-off probably mid-20s and even earlier. He's just going to get better. He won't be hitting his peak until he's 27, 28, I would think, with someone like Phil Foden. So I'm hugely excited about him because I think he's someone that England can build around for the next decade. And he's got 3 caps now, which is, again, he probably would have had more had he taken the route of a Jadon Sancho or a Jude Bellingham and looked for earlier first-team opportunities. But I think this is a kid that could easily win 100 caps. You know, it's very easy to say that, but I think with him there is some substance to it. His is a sustainable talent, which is only going to develop and get better. Imagine in 2 years' time, okay, when he's 23, which was the same age that Kevin De Bruyne was when he left Chelsea for 20 million quid. Yeah. Can you imagine Man City letting Phil Foden go in 2 years' time for 20 million quid? Or what would be the an equitable amount now? It's just not going to happen, is it? No. I mean, you're already talking about someone who's 90 million on
90 million, yeah,
on the platform. I don't think you get close to taking him for 90 million quid.
I was going to say as well that you do get PP. People might not know this, but you get PP for winning Ballon d'Ors, and is that the kind of level that we're expecting to get to in a few years?
Yeah, I think we're watching a world-class talent develop. And the interesting thing and exciting thing as well with Foden is we don't know his position. You know, I would like to think with England, because we are so blessed in those attacking areas, in the wide areas and arguably through the middle, that this is someone that we can play a bit deeper, that can have a role for England maybe as an 8. a bit closer to his own goal sometimes in a starting position and build attacks for us as well. You see the influence that he has at Man City, and perhaps not yet trusted to play in a more central role, though he's done it in one or two games, one or two cup competitions. You'll see him start wide right, you'll see him start wide left, and he can score goals from either side. That's one of the exciting things about him as well. I would like to think that maybe as an 8 he could have great value for England moving forward and make that position his own. But you see he's got the wonderful ability to receive the ball in any position on the pitch, on the half turn, a ball coming at any height. He can do it with either foot. He can go past people. He gets very low to the ground when he dribbles. He can pick a pass. He can create. He can assist. But also that ability to score goals. And I think a lot of attacking midfield players are going to get judged on their ability to score goals. You see this season, what did you say, 5 or 6 already? And different types of goals as well, George. The goal he scored against Brighton when he picked the ball up on the left touch line. He made a sort of horizontal run across the box and then slotted it with his right foot into the near corner. Then the goal he scored against Liverpool when late in the game, Andy Robertson sort of checked his shoulder and thought, it's Phil Foden, he's not going to shoot. And then in the blink of an eye, without barely any backlift, he sort of touched and shot, and the ball was in the top corner before Robertson knew what had happened. He has got so much talent, and there is so much more to come from him.
I definitely agree about the point you make of his position, where he plays left of the three generally for City. And it's ridiculous to think now the embarrassment of riches England have in that position wide on the left, whether it's Rashford coming inside as an inside forward, whether it's Grealish or Foden playing that similar role. Harvey Barnes, a player who, if he was around in the 90s, probably would have got 100 caps for England, given their weakness in that position, and he can't even get in the squad. So I'd like to see him play more centrally. And given, when you get players like this who make such a splash, they're often compared to others. And the two players who you often see him compared to stylistically are Paul Gascoigne, who you mentioned, and also Iniesta is the other one in terms of his ability to play on the half turn in order to carry the ball through midfield when playing in that more withdrawn role. But Dan Jackknife, who wrote a scout report for Foden up on 5 yards, I love this. The comparison that he makes, this is why 5 yards is great, because something I'd never would have thought about. He compares him to both Hristo Stoichkov and Hassam Aouar, which I think is amazing. A player from yesteryear and a player, a precocious young talent at the moment, two such different players, but I guess showing the range of ability that Foden's got. If I had to put you on the spot and compare him stylistically with one, shades of which player, who would you go for?
Yeah, Gascoigne. Gascoigne is the one that leaps out for me. I've said it for a long time about him, but I think the difference is, as I said to you, I think this is a sustainable talent, where Gascoigne's obviously burnt out very quickly, and there was quite a quick physical change in Gascoigne as he went on. Obviously had those horrendous injuries, but he played 57 times for England, Paul Gascoigne. And I would be very surprised. I'd actually go as far to say I'd be surprised if Foden doesn't play 100 times for his country, and contributes with goals as well. Not at the rate that he's scored, so far. I think he's got 2 in 3 caps, but albeit I think most of those goals and caps have been against Iceland, and that's obviously
let's not be too arrogant about Iceland, I think.
Well, quite. And by the way, on the the sort of the disciplinary issue against Iceland, I think that speaks to me of a young kid who's so sure of himself on his first away trip with England that he doesn't think twice about whether this is going to be a problem or not, because he feels so comfortable in his surroundings, probably because he's playing and training every day with players who are better than those who are in the England setup. And this is a theme that we might revisit throughout these 3 England players, but he has obviously a natural self-confidence. You see him in interviews, he's offering more now. I think he feels more at home in front of a camera. He's going to have to get used to that, particularly if he's going to play any kind of leadership role moving forward. But there is the talent of a Gascoigne. There is athleticism I think we don't know about quite yet. A versatility, an eye for goal. He's got everything, George.
A friend of mine who worked with them both at the Man City Academy, when I asked him about, it must have been 3 or 4 years ago now, when they were both coming through as teenagers, and he said Jadon Sancho will be one of England's best players. If he develops the way he is, Phil Foden will be England's best player. And I think maybe we're seeing, even though Sancho's progression went up very quickly early on, I think we're now seeing what he means. We'll move on to the second player that you're going to discuss with us today, and that is Declan Rice, who is up at 37 million. He's 22 years old, of course, West Ham centre midfielder, and a player who I think it's fair to say divides opinion with some. Some see him as just a bit of a battering ram in the middle of the park and doubt his ball playing ability. I personally think that his passing is sometimes quite underrated. So interested to know kind of where you see him now and where you think his career can progress in the next few years, and where you think he should probably go in order to achieve that. I
think in a nutshell, you've almost summed up the feeling about him, towards him from my Sky colleagues. And I won't tell you who said what about him. But yeah, I think you're right. Even at the sort of the very highest level of expertise in football, there is split opinion about Declan Rice. What do I like about him? Well, 37 million, that would be a bargain for Declan Rice if you were going to pay that money for him now. I'm not sure he's worth the 100 that has been spoken of just yet, but I think he could. I think he could get there quite quickly with some developments in his game. I think he's a much better footballer than he shows us. That's my feeling on Declan Rice. I've spoken to people at West Ham, spoken to people around the England setup. This is a kid who in training stands out and does some extraordinary things. And then on a match day, I think he's a bit more reserved. I think he almost sort of slips on that shirt and becomes that number 6 that we expect him to be, the one who breaks up play more than anybody else practically in the Premier League, wins the ball back, chases every part of the pitch. I think that's the early phase Declan Rice, if you like. This is a kid who we should remember as well has played every single minute since the start of last season, and I think people take that for granted. I think George, that is a real feat, and that was one of the things I was saying about James Justin before his injury, which I thought was exceptional in this season of all seasons, was that ability to perform every single week on such a limited pre-season, given the circumstances, the lack of crowds, all that sort of stuff, was phenomenal on Justin's part. Declan Rice has done it last season as well. And you sometimes wonder how much energy he's got left for the other parts of the game that he wants to develop. We've heard him talk recently about being that sort of Yaya Toure figure, the Patrick Vieira ability to break play up and then run with the ball. And now and I'm thinking, does he want to do that because he's not that confident in his passing? Does he want to, rather than being able to shell the ball 50 yards, does he want to carry it himself because of that? But I just think he has the ability to do that because he's such an incredible athlete. And I think what will come from him is the ability to create more as well. And I think he won't be satisfied with just building defensive numbers. I think he will be thinking, what can I add to my game in that final third of the pitch? Be it goals from set pieces a la Souček, be it being able to make those lung-busting runs late into the box like Lampard, be it being a bit more creative with his passing in the final third. And I still do get a bit frustrated watching that side of his game. Even on Sunday, convalescing on the sofa watching the Arsenal game, there was a couple of times where I got frustrated because he hit the first man a couple of times with the cross. There was an occasion where he just had too many touches in a promising position in that final third, and the opportunity sort of went away. Maybe that might develop working under a different manager, which takes us to the next bit. So yeah. I don't think he has to leave West Ham. I'm actually of the view that the Premier League is strong enough that he could have a really good career there, and that would be great for all of us because that would be an interesting thing every time we watch West Ham. We can watch Declan Rice and enjoy his performances. But if he was playing under Pep Guardiola, would a different side of his game develop? Absolutely it would, for sure. When he played against Manchester United last week, I raised the issue in the studio about comparing him to McTominay, Fred, Matic, and whether you were getting more or less in Declan Rice. My view is that you're getting more already. And I think there's a lot more to come from his game. And the other thing I really like about him, George, is his personality. Again, we just go, oh, Declan, nice bloke, has a laugh. But he's 22 years old, and that ability to have that confidence in front of camera and speak to us the way he did on Monday Night Football a couple of weeks ago, ability to laugh at himself in a public way like that, just speaks volumes to me of a brilliant character, someone that would be an asset to any dressing room, and you know, that's not to be underestimated as well at elite sporting level.
It's interesting you mentioned the managers, because, you know, the two key men in his career at the moment are David Moyes and Gareth Southgate, and no one is saying that either of those are doing a bad job. Both doing, I mean, certainly Moyes this season doing extraordinary things, and of course Southgate's last tournament was an unmitigated success as well, but both quite cautious in their management style, especially I think with Souček being such a goal threat, an unexpected goal threat. It probably puts the reins on Rice a little bit. Two managers who probably like their defensive midfielders to kind of hold the shape and to recycle the ball quickly to the wide flair players as well. And on the scout reports up on 5 yards, you can put which club you think they would be a perfect fit for. But I guess in this case, is it which manager would be a perfect fit for Declan Rice? You know, he's been linked to Chelsea strongly when Frank Lampard was there. Whether or not they'll be interested in the summer with Thomas Tuchel, we'll see. You've mentioned Guardiola, you've mentioned Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who, you know, you mentioned Matic and Fred. I would say that Solskjaer's got some responsibility for their poor performances on occasion. Where would you like, if you were Declan Rice's agent or you were somebody who was following his career, which manager do you think would get the best out of him?
I think Guardiola would take his game to another level, and there's an argument that Tuchel could as well. Right now, but as I say, if I was his agent, I don't think I'd be in a rush to move him right now, because he's playing every game. I'd like to think that his game could be in Europe. I'd like to think that his game is going to develop, and he's got loads of time on his side. So there's, you know, you speak to all these experts, they all say, you know, there's no substitute for playing football, and okay, Phil Foden's people might argue differently. But I wouldn't be in any hurry, I don't think.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with him. I mean, I think any 5 yards players who've got him at 37 million will be hoping that you're wrong and he does move on so he can get those wins under his belt for a team like City. But of course, he is guaranteed to play minutes whilst he's at West Ham, every single minute, as David says there. Yeah. The final man we're going to talk about, the final player, is Dean Henderson, who's got a big couple of weeks coming up, 24 years of age, up at 34 million. He's been Manchester United's starting keeper for the last few weeks after David De Gea returned to Spain for the birth of his child. He's now likely to get a chance to stake his claim for the number 1 shirt for England with Jordan Pickford injured. Interesting, Henry Winter wrote an article in the Times yesterday, the headline of which was "Make Phil Foden chief creator and keep Jordan Pickford as number 1, how Gareth Southgate should tackle the Euros." Fair to say that you agree with the first part after our first chat. What are your thoughts on the second?
Well, there's a theme here, George, with these 3 players that I picked, because I think that they, as a trio, could be the cornerstone of the England team for the next 10 years or more. I didn't mention Dion Sanderson, who would have been the 4th pillar of that process.
Or Rob Atkinson.
We could have a good debate on that one, couldn't we?
Yeah,
Dion or Rob. But I'm not sure the time is now necessarily for these guys, or we should expect them to be delivering this moment. And the one thing as well, I'm not sure. I get what Henry is saying there, but I look at Gareth Southgate's selection for this squad. You know, for example, Trippier over Trent Alexander-Arnold. You could argue. What does that message tell you? To me, that says he can't then turn around and say, "I'm building for the future," because this is a squad that's for now. So if it is for now, we shouldn't really expect to see Dean Henderson playing in this tournament, and I would probably support that, because I don't think he's done enough to validate that. You know, I don't think there's any great history of young England goalkeepers being given their head and doing brilliantly. Okay, Pickford was 25 2 years ago at the World Cup. He's 27 now, so Henderson will be at 25 next summer. But Pickford had the experience, I think, that probably Henderson hasn't to this point. My big thing on Dean Henderson is that, and I would even go as far to say that I'd like to see Pope get some real quality game time over this international window, because I think Pope's deserving of it. We don't know enough about Pope yet as an England goalkeeper, and I think we need to have some of those questions answered before we even look at Dean Henderson. But still, I think Dean Henderson could be better than either of Pickford and Pope, and I say that as somebody who watched Jordan Pickford come through. I recognise his frailties, but I also see his great strengths as well. And I know that Gareth, I'm pretty sure that Gareth will be loyal to him this summer, unless something extraordinary happens injury-wise or form-wise between now and then. Dean Henderson, I've got a little theory on him and Manchester United, and I think we sort of reacted to David De Gea's absence when it happened as a bit of a surprise, and De Gea's not here and Dean Henderson's come in, and could he have been given a chance before now, or is he going to keep his shirt? I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer saw this coming, and I think he'd planned for it. And I think sometimes goalkeeping, it's very hard to, as a manager, to change your goalkeeper. And I've seen this close hand at Sunderland and some of the problems that my club has had in terms of trying to alternate between two goalkeepers. I think sometimes just if you feel as a manager it's the right time, or the right time is just around the corner. And I think he would have planned for this moment for Dean Henderson to get a proper run as Manchester United goalkeeper, and so would have resisted any clamour before now, knowing that he had this window of opportunity. And the big decision now is when he actually switches back to De Gea. But I think Henderson started, I had a look at this morning, Joe. I think he started all the last 6 for Manchester United. He's played 10 times for United this season, I think, and only conceded in 2 of those games. I think there would be a great deal of scepticism still, even amongst Manchester United fans, about him being United ready. And what I mean by that is probably not just United ready, but United ready to challenge for the title next season, in the same way that you would go and get Edison or Alisson, or go and sign Jan Oblak and expect suddenly to have that position elevated. I'm not sure he's at that level, or anyone thinks he is, but I think he can become that. What I would like to see with Dean Henderson is him get a chance next season at a big club, whether it's Manchester United or, I've seen Spurs linked with him. I think this is his time. So if it doesn't happen at Manchester United, if I was in his position now, I would want to know this summer. If it's not going to be me, fine, because I'm ready to do this, I'll go and play somewhere else and let him have his move, because I think he needs to be playing. I think it'd be great for English football if he does get a chance with a top club, if it's not Manchester United. We had Rob Green on Monday Night Football a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, and he was talking about two of the technical issues around Dean Henderson's game, and he was talking about this position that he gets himself in before a shot, where his hands are facing palm outwards behind his back, essentially, before a ball comes to him, where other goalkeepers might be in this position. He's got his hands behind his back, and he said it's something that Spanish goalkeepers quite often do, and David De Gea might have taught him this. And then you have that thrust forward when a ball comes, and a few days later he conceded against Milan in that very fashion, with his hands behind his back, header from the corner. He didn't have time, it seemed, to get the ball up and over.
Straight over his head, wasn't it?
Yeah, and there's nobody that knows that more than Dean Henderson. So he'll be working out what his very best methods are and practices are. He'll be studying every goalkeeper in world football to work out what he wants to be. The other thing is that people talk about his confidence, if it's a dirty word, and this is a very English thing, I think, in football terms, and maybe in sporting terms. Oh, he's a confident boy, isn't he? As if that's a bad thing. But I think if you're going to be a goalkeeper for England, and you're going to be a goalkeeper for a top club, you have to have that self-belief. Chris Wilder talked about it as a strength when he had him at Sheffield United, but others almost see it as some kind of weakness. I like it about him. And as I say, I think it's a big summer for him. What's his price, George?
He is up at 34 million. But obviously that, you get PP for clean sheets, for winning games, but he has to be playing, and that is the key issue there. I mean, I was going to say, before I let you go, you have obviously sat and watched a fair bit of Manchester United with Roy Keane, with Gary Neville. I mean, do you have any insight to people who have, Manchester United's best interests at heart and will know a lot about both players? I mean, would they want to see Dean Henderson playing more often, or is their faith still retained in David De Gea?
There's a lot of faith in De Gea from Gary. you'll know that there isn't from Roy, because he's been very public about that. I think it was my view a year ago they should just go and get Oblak.
Yeah.
You've got the financial might to do it. Why don't you just go and spend 100 million on someone who's reportedly the best goalkeeper in the world? Because I think he would usurp both. If you've got a bit more time to go about it, then you've got the opportunity to wait and see if Dean Henderson is that guy. I'm not sure that the two people that you've spoken of think that he is, but I think they both feel that he's deserving of an opportunity. And there are some big games for Manchester United between now and the end of the season. I think it's a bit of an acid test for him whether he gets the opportunity to show that he's number one. Because if he doesn't get the chance, we'll probably never know, will we?
No.
But if he's able to get the shirt and help them into the top four, help them to a European trophy perhaps, then maybe this is the person that United need to be building around for the future.
All I know is that it's another success story of an EFL loan, and that's the important thing. Went down to the Championship, did his thing, and now he's in the England squad and vying for the number one shirt at Manchester United. David, thank you very much for joining us today. Pleasure to have you on 5x5, and looking forward to seeing you back on our screens after a well-deserved break in a couple of weeks' time. Thank
you, George. Good to chat to you as ever.
Fabulous piece of guest booking from you, George, calling in a few favours there. Brilliant to hear an absolute legend of broadcasting talking all things England and England talent. And you're going to Czech's Notes talk to us about another England talent, Jesse Lingard.
Jesse Lingard is the player I'm going to talk about today. We wouldn't have called him an England talent a couple of months ago, would we? But back in the England squad for the next couple of weeks. And I must admit that I understand it, Ali. I do. I get that he's out from the cold into the West Ham team and doing great things there, but it just seems like a bit of a backward step to me. Now, this isn't going to be a negative couple of minutes of analysis, because let's talk about Jesse Lingard and what he's doing at the moment. He's up on 5 yards at 16 million, which seems pretty cheap for a guy who's 28 years old and who's still contracted to Manchester United. You also think his game is pretty perfectly suited to 5 yards. What does Jesse Lingard do if he's not impacting games with goals and assists? For so long, there was that period over a year or so where he hadn't scored for Manchester United and his form dipped completely. But when Jesse Lingard's on form, that is what he's there to do. He's there to be a threat in the final third, either as a creator or a goal scorer. He's scored 5 goals already for West Ham and got 2 assists. He's racking up the PP with 1.4 million in just a couple of months. So obviously, if he continues to show this level of form for 3 seasons, then he's going to far eclipse that 16 million. So you don't have to be too concerned with his age. The fact that he's into the England squad now shows, I guess, well, firstly, it shows that Gareth Southgate is a manager whose opinions on players, he doesn't need persuading if it's somebody who's been an ally of his before, and he really needs persuading if it's somebody that he hasn't really fancied, as we saw with Jack Grealish for a while, as we're currently seeing with James Maddison, who I think for disciplinary reasons, as was the case with Grealish, Southgate is in no hurry to bring him back into the fold. Lingard, I guess, has a reputation for maybe being a bit of a joker and a bit of a troublemaker as well. But he's somebody who was part of that England squad at the World Cup 3 years ago. A pretty key part of it as well, scoring a brilliant goal in the win over Panama in the group stages. I was there. It was a fantastic goal. And generally pretty lively in that tournament too. His issue, you would think, is in the players that he's competing against. We heard Dave earlier talk about Foden, and even though Foden's been playing off the left for City, ideally his best role would be as an attacking 8. You have to think with someone like Rice playing alongside. For Lingard, it's got to be exactly the same. He's not a winger. If we're going to play the system that we anticipate, Rashford is clearly the more natural player to play in that 3-pronged attack, either side of Kane. I think if you played Lingard there would just be congestion in the middle. I think he's somebody who, and at West Ham, he is playing through the middle. He's playing a more central role. So what happens next with Lingard is the key question here. Because if he's going to go back and be a first-team player at Manchester United, is that a good thing? Because he was a first-team player for Manchester United for the 18 months before he fell away and barely registered any PP, barely registered anything. He strikes me as the kind of player who will thrive in a poorer side, who'll thrive in a team where he is maybe a little bit of a big dog in a side, maybe somebody who will be a key attacking threat and not somebody on the periphery. He'll get consistent minutes as well. So in my view, if he ends up at West Ham, if West Ham sign him on a permanent deal in the summer, then that 60 million is a much more attractive proposition than it would be if he stayed at Manchester United, where I think we can say he effectively wasn't good enough. You look back at his record there. I know you remember the FA Cup final winning goal and other moments of genius, but his best goal tally in a season was 8. After that, it was 4. He was always a player who showed some ability in fits and starts. You and I remember him in loan spells in the Championship where, unlike other players we've seen dip down to the Championship and be so good. Looking back again, Maddison, Grealish, these kind of players who he's vying against, a completely different quality to their games. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. I don't think he's good enough for United personally, but you've got to give him credit for his current form. Where if he manages to get into the England squad in the summer on the back of this, over those I've mentioned, I won't be very happy.
I feel like you having to think about Jesse Lingard, consider Jesse Lingard and his future, has taken quite a lot out of you there. Feels like this has been quite a big thing for you. A lot of deep breaths there,
It's a broadcasting tactic. If you've forgotten what you're saying, take a deep breath. Buys you a couple of seconds.
Well, it sounded like tough work, but I agree with everything you say, and I've been delighted by his form when he joined West Ham, and looking forward to seeing more of that in an England shirt. Whether he'll actually make it into the Euro squad, I'm not sure, but he can give himself every opportunity. And you're correct to mention that Gareth Southgate, he doesn't forget prior performance in an England shirt, and Lingard was a key performer in England's World Cup 2018 run. He had the most non-penalty shots of all England players, did you know? Outside of Kane, he was our number one, or outside of Kane, I guess you could say, he was our number 2 goalkeeper. Anyway, I'm going to talk about a Northern Irishman, very much born in Stevenage in Hertfordshire, raised in the Arsenal Academy, but already 5 caps for Northern Ireland. At the age of 21, looks like someone who will be at the heart of the Northern Irish defence for the next decade or so, and it's Daniel Ballard. He is a player who's currently playing for Blackpool in League One, on loan from Arsenal. He's on 5 yards at £4.5 million, which there won't be too many players on the game at a lower price than that, and that reflects both his position as a centre-back, not a position that we would associate with the sort of players that we like to call PP monsters, but also the fact that he's playing currently in League One, which is a division outside of performance pay, so not currently getting any monetary credit for wins, for goals, for assists, but he is catching the eye, and certainly over the last month or two, Blackpool fans have finally seen the development of Ballard to the point where he's now considered, I would say, their key centre-back, or one of, heading into potentially a playoff campaign where he could really catch the eye and pick up a little bit more interest. So I'm almost trying to get in front of Ballard kind of becoming a slightly bigger name over the next few months in EFL terms. In the last 8 games that he has played for Blackpool, they've only conceded 3 goals. And it's interesting because I'm not actually here to say that I think Daniel Ballard is going to reach the very top and play his whole career in the Premier League. If I thought that, then his price of £4.5 million would be pretty attractive indeed. From what I've watched, clips on Y-Scout of his defending, and bear in mind this is someone who has still played less than 20 league games in his whole career, he's had some real battles with some pretty hardy League One strikers, the likes of Pigott at Wimbledon, Cameron Jerome at MK Dons, Chukwuemeka of Charlton, who got sent off for elbowing Ballard in the face. He's had a lot of proper physical battles with canny operators, is how I would describe it. And there have been times where he hasn't necessarily, I'd be wrong to say he has dominated all of those strikers 100% of the time. There have been times where he's been rolled and the striker's been able to get a shot off, and maybe the keeper's made a save or has hit the bar. But there are lots of things to like as well. He's definitely a front foot defender. He's probably not as dominant physically and aerially as a lot of proper League One stalwarts. Maybe that's not surprising for someone of his age and inexperience, and hopefully that's something that he can develop, more of a physical presence. But he's not small by any means, and he's already scored 2 headers from set pieces in the last few weeks alone. So he's clearly got an ability to attack the ball and to win aerial duels. But I have seen a couple of strikers, just handle his close, tight marking in a way that I sort of mark him down a little bit for. But it's an interesting backstory. He was released twice by Arsenal before forcing his way back to the academy both times, all before he turned 18. So really interesting character. And I think character is the right word, because it stands out so much when you watch clips of him, how vocal he is, how much of an organiser he is, despite being the least experienced player in Blackpool's back line. How personally offended he seems to be when the opposition even take a shot, even if it's not a particularly tough one. So I've been really enjoying watching him. The Blackpool fans have seen him developing in front of their eyes. The fact that he's away on international break at the moment and will miss a few games for them is seen as a bit of an issue for them. They're concerned about that, such is their performance with him at the heart of the defence in the last 8 games or so. So I guess for me, in 5 yards terms, the interesting question is what chance he makes it at Arsenal. I would suggest not much of a chance. I'm sure that they like him a lot, but we know that there is a lot of difference between liking an academy player a lot and actually giving them a chance in your first team. Of course, Rob Holding is someone who worked his way up from the EFL and now plays at the heart of an Arsenal defence. So it's not out of the question that someone who is playing in League One age 21 can make it to the very top of the game. In fact, if you look at other Premier League centre-backs, the likes of Harry Maguire, James Tarkowski, Tyrone Mings, Connor Cody, Lewis Dunk, Ezri Konza, even Joe Gomez. A lot of these guys were playing in the third tier when they were this sort of age. So I guess I'm just finding it difficult to understand exactly what his ceiling will be and where he could get to, because he's looking very, very tidy. He's looking like a good organiser, good defensive instincts, scoring a couple of goals at the other end. I'd want to see a little bit more before I make a full judgment on him. But I just feel like there's a good chance he gets a loan in the Championship next season. If he finishes the season strong for Blackpool, if they make the playoffs and he performs well, I would be pretty confident that a Championship club will take him on loan next season. All of a sudden then, he is in a performance pay league, albeit a small one, and it's not hard to see how another good season in the Championship, and all of a sudden it doesn't take much for people to start talking about young centre-backs in glowing terms and talking about a move to the Premier League. So he's just an interesting one for me. So cheap, really, in 5 yards terms at £4.5 million, and so young that it's hard to see him losing his value too much from this point, because he looks comfortable at League One level and he's only 21. So just someone I wanted to flag up, really. Daniel Ballard of Arsenal on loan at Blackpool. There may well be Arsenal fans watching this, and I'd love to hear from you who think you've got a better steer on what his ceiling is. And I'd love to hear in the comments section what you guys think is a likely career for Daniel Ballard. Of course, the other option is to write a scout report on 5 yards. You can put down your opinion on Ballard, decide where you think he'll end up, and put that opinion down in writing. And that's really what we want to encourage people to do. Use the scouting side of 5 yards. We've had over 500 reports in March. It's breaking all of our records, and they're flying in. We're absolutely loving it. And it makes 5 yards, it makes the game a whole lot better, because we've got great information, great opinions on hundreds and hundreds of players on the platform. We're absolutely loving it. George, that was a long monologue, but I still want to tell you which players are going up on 5 yards this week. Will you allow me to do that?
Tell me, yes.
Well, we've got, as always, a diverse bunch of players. We've got Championship superstars of this season: Connor Roberts of Swansea, Ken Sema of Watford. We've got a departed Championship superstar in Ben Davies, who is currently missing in action in Liverpool, and it'd be very interesting to see where he will end up, because it doesn't seem like that move will end in glory in the Reds of Liverpool. But we've also got someone like Tino Anjorin, who I know within the Chelsea setup is considered about as exciting an academy product as they've had in the last decade or so. Also Max Vobert, Roland Salai, Ronnie Edwards and Tai Soji, as well as Takuni Minamino. So lots of players going up on 5 yards, and we ask you to go, if you know these players, and write scouting reports for them. Any other business, George?
None from me.
None from you. Well, enjoy the international break. Hopefully you enjoyed Dave Jones, our special guest. We thank him for his time, and we're looking forward to next week, because we're going to do a under 21 Euros special. I'm going to be watching as much of that as I can over the next week or so, and hopefully I'll have some interesting players to talk you through next week on the 5x5. Please do subscribe to this podcast feed and to the 5 Yards YouTube channel as well. Follow us on Twitter at 5_yards and ask us any questions you have about 5 yards. Always happy to answer them. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of the week. Have a good weekend.